Hello, today we're going to look at unpivoting data. We use pivoted data for various reasons. A lot of forecasts, it's easier to look at, but when it comes to analytics, it's not so easy to use. So we're going to show you how to use Power Query to easily unpivot your data and create a refreshable report where you can do analytics in the back end while someone uses a pivoted version of your data for data entry. Let's head on over to the spreadsheet. First, let's start off, what is pivoted versus unpivoted data? Here's a very simple example of a bike store with quantities of items they're forecasted to sell in each month. So we have each month, quantity here. It's very easy to look at, and this would probably be a great place for someone to enter their data in. Now, over on the green on the right-hand side, we have unpivoted data. This type of data is much easier to read for analytics and much easier to work with. So a good situation is, hey, if you have someone entering data, you don't want to ask them to enter it in like this. Let's use Power Query to transform that data in the background so that you can also do analytics. Let's head on over right to the Forecast tab. As you can tell, we have similar data here, and we're going to load this Power Query. So first things first, we're going to create a table. Control A to select everything, and Control T to get a table. My table does have headers, so I select OK. Perfect. And now once I click at the table, my table design tab pops up here, and I name this table Forecast. Now we're going to load the table into Power Query. Super easy. Click inside the table, head to the Data tab, and select From Table/Range, and Power Query will open right up with your table loaded. Since we pre-named our table, we don't have to worry about naming it here. Now, how do we get this unpivoted? So the idea is we want this to look like that green chart on the first page. So we want it to be items, dates, values. Super simple way to do this. First of all, I'm going to come on over here and I'm going to delete this change type. Power Query automatically changed the type of your data to where it best thinks, and a lot of the times it's pretty spot on, but we don't need this in this case, and we're going to change it later anyways, and it'd impede if you wanted to add future forecasts later. So I'm going to exit that out. I'm going to come on up here. I'm going to right click on item. If you had, say, a subcategory or more categories that were not date or value entry categories, you would highlight all of them by holding Control and clicking on the next columns. But since we only have one, this is pretty easy. We're going to select it, right click. We're going to head on down to unpivot other columns. You can choose to unpivot the columns you selected or unpivot other columns. The reason we're going to unpivot other columns is so we can add dates in the future. If we selected all of our dates and unpivoted those specific columns, Power Query would be referring to those column names specifically when it looks to unpivot. But we don't want it to do that because we want to add more columns later potentially if we want to add more dates. So now that we unpivoted our other columns, we're going to rename this attributes. I'm going to name this month because we're going to transform this into a month name. And I'm going to rename values quantity. Something really quick we got to do is we got to highlight the month column and we got to transform this and tell Power Query that it's a date. Come on down here under the Home tab, data type, date. Now that we've made it a date, we can use this reference column. I want a month and a year inputted here. I can use this reference column to create a new column. So I come up here, add column with the month column selected. I head over to date. I want a year, and I just want the standard year. I don't need start or end of the year. We're good to go there. It already names a year. We're good to go. Now I want to transform this column into a month name. So I select it. I'm going to not add another column because I don't need to, because I don't need this column anymore when I'm done. I'm going to head over to transform. The transform and the add columns tabs are actually very similar and they have similar functionality. Transform is if you want to edit the current column you are highlighting. Add column is if you want to add a new column based off of a reference column that you're highlighting. So we're going to go to transform, data. Going to go to month right here, and I want the name of the month. You've got tons of different options with the date formulas, but we're just looking for name of the month. Now at this point, I'm gonna go load one more table in here. So we wanna use this, for example, you can use this for so many things, but we're gonna do comparative analytics from the forecast to the actuals. So I gotta repeat this process with my actual table. This time I wanna load it just to create connection. Default will say table. I don't want it to load anything yet. We'll get there. Create a connection only, select OK. Perfect. Now you're gonna see this Power Query connection pop up in your queries and connection tab over here. If you want to exit that out, that's okay. You can get right back to it by selecting data, queries and connections up top here. Let's head on over to actuals. We're going to do the exact same thing. For the purpose of this video, we are going to be in April, and we have finalized numbers for April of 24. I highlighted everything. Control T for a table. My table does have headers. Select OK. And we're going to open up table design by clicking anywhere in the table. Rename this actuals. Perfect. We're going to load this to Power Query now. Select anywhere in the table. Go to Data from Table and Range. This loads right up. As you can see, we've already named it. We are going to do the same thing. I'm going to delete the change type here. I'm going to right click on the item column, select unpivot other columns, and you see we have the exact same setup. So this one, we're going to rename it month because we're going to transform it into a month. We are going to go up to home data type, tell it it's a date, and we're now going to click on the month, go to add column, go to date. We want to add the year here. So year, perfect. Now go back to month, highlight. We want to transform date. We're going to do month again and name of month. Perfect. Now we got both these in here. Okay, one last thing. This time for actuals, I'm going to rename this and I want to say quantity actuals. Right there. And on forecast, I'm actually going to choose to rename this quantity forecast too. So I can just double click to rename again. It will create another renaming column or another renaming step here. That's okay. If you want to go back and just change the original renaming, you can go up over here. You can find your step and you can rename it within here. But for simplicity reasons, I'm just going to double click and rename it again. So dash forecast. Perfect. Now we're going to merge these tables together. So we got a month and a year and an item. We're going to merge on all three and then get the correct actual quantity for the forecast. So I'm going to choose to merge onto my forecast table. You can actually create a new one, or if you merge onto your actuals, that's okay too, but you won't have the remainder of the year's forecast left, and that's important. So I'm going to merge onto my forecast table. I'm going to go over here to forecast, go to the home tab, click merge queries. And by default, if you click merge queries, it'll merge onto the current table you are there. If you do want to merge it onto a separate query, you go to this down arrow and you can say merge as new. But I'm going to merge it just simply onto the forecast table. I'm going to do a drop down right here and I'm going to select actuals. And we want to tell it which columns line up. So I'm going to select item down up here, item down there. Perfect. Now I'm going to hold the control button. So it lets me select a second one. I'm going to hold control. It'll say 2 up here. I'm going to keep holding control, select month down here. Perfect. Now I got one more I want to merge it on. For this current data set, it actually wouldn't matter, but if we start adding more years to our data set, this will matter. So we always want to set it up so it'll be refreshable and usable in the future. So hold control, year and year. Perfect. Come on down. It'll tell me, hey, how many of these are matching? Now, we don't have all actuals yet for 24, so it's okay that just 20 of 60 rows. If you had all actuals and all forecasts, that could be a good indicator that there's something missing in the data, and you'd want to go back and take a quicker look. But this is okay for our data set because we don't have complete data yet. Select OK. You can tell that it merged our actual table here. Now, this little button up here will allow us to say what columns we want to see within the table. I'm going to unselect and I just want to see quantity actual. And I'm going to uncheck use column name as prefix because this is an original column name. It's the same name as something else in this table, so I'm not going to get it confused. If I named it the exact same thing and I select this, it'll use the table name dot column name so you can tell them apart. We don't do that in this case. So now we have quantity forecast, quantity actuals. We've got item, month, and year. So this we can now do comparative analysis on. We can either do a variance analysis in here and then load it to a table, or we can load it to a pivot table. I'm going to do a variance analysis while loading it to a pivot table. So we're going to close and load to. We're going to select connection again because our most recent table we loaded in was the actual table and we don't want that reloaded. Create connection only, select OK. I'm going to create a new sheet for our analytics. I'm going to name it actuals v forecast. And I'm going to load our forecast tab right on here. So I'm going to right click, load to. I'm going to load this to a pivot table report. Existing sheet, I'm going to select here. I like to load it to column 14 or row 14 because then we can insert slicers on top. We normally don't have to move anything around. So in this case, I'm going to select, I'm going to put my item right here on my rows because I want to see all my items going down. I'm going to put my month across, easy to see and look at. I'm also going to put year on top just in case we add another year in here. And I'm going to do my quantity forecast and quantity actual. I'm going to put my forecast on top and then I'm going to put my actuals on bottom. Now, right now what I did is the value is in the columns. I want the values to go on the rows. So I'm going to click and drag this value down here. So now what happens is that we have, for each of them, we've got quantity forecast, quantity actual. So you can see right here, forecast actual for each. Let's put a variance analysis in here. So we're going to go up and add a custom column. We're going to go to pivot table analytics, fields, items, and sets, calculated fields. Now we want to calculate the difference. So we want to calculate the variance. And we're simply going to do forecast minus actuals. And select OK. Now you can see there's a third line added for each item called the variance. I like to clean my pivot tables up a little bit. This is totally optional. I don't like the sum of quantity there, so I'm going to get rid of that. And you have to put a space after the end right there so Excel lets you rename it because it already has that name as a reference. I'm going to press OK, and I'm going to do the same thing. Value field setting, quantity right here, a space right afterwards. And then you can actually go, you can do it over here too if you want to. You can rename from the actual pivot table. And that works too. So now I've got quantity, forecast, and variance. So you can see we were 634 over actuals. If this was a financial report, this would actually be the best way to do that. I think now I actually want to switch around forecast and actuals because if we oversold in a sales situation, it's normally a positive thing. So I'm actually going to go back and change formula. So calculated yield. And I can modify my formula by hitting the drop down button, selecting variance. And I am going to simply do actual minus forecast now. And depending how you want to look at your data, you can set it up any way you want. Click modify and select OK. And as you can see, we just kind of change our positives and negatives around there a bit. One last thing I like to do, so this is really easy to look at, is I like to apply some conditional formatting to each item, or each row here, so I can tell which the variance analysis is. So I'm going to select anywhere in here. I'm going to conditional formatting, highlight cell rules. I'm going to say between. I want to highlight between negative 5,000. I'm just putting a random number here. Now, if you're going to go above 5,000, then you need to put a larger number in there. All of our sales are going to be between 0 and 1,500. Obviously, our variance could go there too with the negatives. And I wanna have, you can do custom. I won't get into that right now. I'm gonna make this a variance analysis in yellow. I've just now made conditional formatting to highlight this one cell, but I'm going to go back into conditional formatting, manage my rules. I'm going to double click this. And since it's in a pivot table, it's really cool. What we can do is we can select it, and I want it to show yellow for everything that's variance, for everything that's an item, and everything that's in a month. Actually, I'm going to go in just the top one here, so if we do a drill down, it doesn't affect it. And select OK. I'm going to apply and select OK. Now it just highlighted my variance super fast so I can see this. Super easy use case, and now that you have a variance analysis. Okay, let's go back here. Now you updated your actuals for the month. We sold 500 bikes. We sold 250 shoes. We sold 900 helmets, 400 shirts, and only 4 pedals. Now you want to update this for the month. Super cool. You know what to do? Right click and press refresh and watch August those numbers come in. Oops, I did not press refresh. Cancel. Right click, refresh, and those May numbers now will just populate in your field. This is a super easy way to have reports flow through. One more thing I want to cover. You can now say we are a forecast for January of 25. Let's just add another column here. 1-31-2025, and we think we're going to do pretty well at that month. Okay, we've numbers in for 1/31/2025. Now let's go on back to our forecast and actuals. Right click. Let's refresh this table. Refresh, and look, now we have January of 25 in here. I'm gonna auto format this all by double clicking so we can see all the dates. And if I want to just look at 24/25, you can use your pivot table filters to do that. There's many other applications of this. We can make this into a chart up top. Let's quickly add some slicers so people can do their own filtering. Super simple. So I'm gonna click inside the pivot table, insert slicer. I'm gonna insert an item and a year so that they can select the item or year that they wanna do. Up here, I'm just going to put them up here. As you can see, this is why I chose row 14 because it easily fits up here. So I can select, if I just want to look at the bikes, how the bikes are doing for 2024, I can tell. I can also add total bars over here by selecting inside the pivot table, and I can go to pivot table design, grand totals, and I'm going to put them on for rows and columns so I can see how the performance of bikes were throughout the year. And I have undersold bikes in the year by 5,419, but I'm less than halfway through the year, so that might not be so worrisome. So I can actually just highlight on here and see my variance. It's so bad, -67. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on how to unpivot data and why to unpivot data. Please let me know if you have any questions.